Since time immemorial, people have wondered where they come from, where they're going, and who they are. Humankind has reinvented the world again and again, always believing in the possibility of a better future. 500 years ago, Martin Luther started the Reformation, transforming the way people worshipped and thought. Today, we're standing at another crossroads.
I would like to see people continuing to question things and not being afraid of technological progress, because that progress is what gave us today's world and prosperity.
You can't just say, oh, I don't care about Nigerians and Ghanaians. They're nothing to do with me. If they drown in garbage over there because of our e-waste, they all end up here.
It's kind of ridiculous in 2016 to create borders. First of all, we need to overcome the borders of our hearts and minds that are very dangerous. So these borders we need to overcome, we need to cross.
The speed at which the world is changing continues to gather pace. We all want to know what the future holds. Should we have faith in it? Or should we be afraid of it? We all want to live in a free, peaceful world. But in many places, this remains impossible. There are plenty of people who refuse to be cowed and are striding confidently towards a future they're actively building.
Young people need to rise up, not necessarily against their elders, but so they can have their say to push for sustainability and generational equality. We're at a turning point in the digital age. We're facing questions such as, how do we continue living together? What does privacy mean today? And freedom, do we need new definitions?
"500 years ago, Martin Luther introduced the notion of man as a free lord of all, subject to none. The modern self is a product of the Enlightenment, education, and science. Today, mankind is exploring space, well aware that our planet is just a tiny speck in what we now believe is an infinite universe. But humankind is failing to look after it. If we want our planet to survive, we need all the imagination and creativity we can muster.
It's not clear how to do that, right? There are no clear-cut approaches or answers, and so it needs to be experimental. It needs to try, it needs to fail, it needs to branch out in all kinds of new ways, different ways, things that have never been thought of as art before, in order to grapple with these kind of major unknowns.
Heather Dewey-Hochbog is an information artist who lives in Chicago. She's highly critical of data collection and surveillance practices. Martin Luther was also something of a rebel in his time. He took a stand against the church, and he believed in the existence of Satan and fought his influence.
The stake. War, fanaticism, hell on earth. All the chaos of the world originates with you. Let me be.
To Luther, the church in Rome was corrupted by the devil. He called for a return to true faith. He saw the Bible as God's word and argued that it gave ordinary Christians direct access to God without the Pope or priests as mediators. Luther's translation of the Bible into German marked a milestone on mankind's path to freedom of conscience and personal autonomy.
Have we progressed in the last 500 years or not? I would say, yes, we have. Life has become easier. Here in the West, we enjoy free speech. We have religious freedom. We can talk to one another. We have made a lot of progress in many areas. But we also need to bear in mind that history has shown that we humans can be dangerous.
Der Mensch immer noch ein gefährliches Wesen ist.
Will science and technology help bring about peace on Earth? These questions have been asked again and again over 5 centuries.
I look for puzzles and ask questions. That's the core of science, the core of mankind's technological progress, the fact that we ask questions. And it's also why there has always been religion, right from the outset. We ask questions and we look for answers. Religion provided an easy answer, scientists provided the right answers. Asking questions is what drives us. Our research is all about finding answers.
Sebastian Bartsch works at the Robotics Innovation Center in Bremen. It's part of the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, which is the largest research organization in its field worldwide.
My mission or vision is to build robot systems that provide human beings with support. That's what I love about my work, the idea that we're developing robot systems that can work in areas human beings have difficulty accessing, such as outer space, underwater, or, say, a damaged nuclear power plant, places you can't necessarily send humans.
State-of-the-art robots can communicate with speech and interact with their environment.
So sorry. I hope we'll do better next time. You should ask one of my colleagues to answer your question.
I'm confident we'll see service robots that, for example, can support manufacturing to help prevent back problems in workers and boost efficiency.
12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start.
The first successful human spaceflight took place more than 50 years ago. The era of space exploration had dawned. Alexander Gerst was the 3rd German in space.
When you're in outer space, you realize that our planet isn't as big as we think. When we grow up, it seems so infinite. But out there, you see that it's actually pretty small, and it has very limited resources. You look at it and realize that all the resources we can access are scattered about just below the Earth's surface. And if we waste them, that'll be it. They'll be gone. It's very shocking to look down at the Earth from out there and see how vulnerable it is.
The boundaries of what is possible have stretched beyond our wildest imaginings. In financial terms, too. Developing and maintaining the International Space Station has cost some 100 billion euros so far.
We do constructive work in space, like grow plants in weightless conditions and experiment with them to see how to optimize the growth of roots, to see how roots grow in the first place, how plants can tell up and down. That can help us farm more efficiently, even in parched soil. That's very useful in regions adversely affected by climate change. Then people won't have to leave their homes because there's no food. That's just one example of how space travel plays a part in solving the problems facing our planet.
So that's why a philosopher like me feels sort of under pressure to say, well, what does it take to get from where we are to a society we will be proud of? And I think that's a unique opportunity. We're building our information societies as we speak. It doesn't happen all the time to have that moment in history where so much can be built, so much can be designed, and so many mistakes can be avoided. What does it take? Thinking.
Imagine that 100,000 people watch this show. Then all of them go to Good Deed and make a donation to plant a tree, for example. In just 1 month, we could plant 3 million trees. We could plant an entire forest.
Vincent Touboul-Flachere from Paris was just 17 when he had a brainwave. Together with some friends, he launched an online platform where people can make donations to good causes, even when they don't have any money.
I didn't know what would make people happy. But what we're trying to do with Good Deed is give everyone a chance to create change. Not just once or twice, but as often as they like.
Users can go to Good Deed and donate for free by watching an ad. The money generated by the ad goes to an NGO. Vincent's idea has revolutionized the concept of donation.
Sur le vide. Ouais, des consciences, donc il y a des ah, c'est cool ça. Die gesamte ältere
Germany's older, traditional intellectual elite simply hasn't understood the phenomenon of digitalization. So we run the risk of missing the boat. Then Germany won't be on the cutting edge of progress. Instead of tearing down barriers to the future, we'll be putting them up.
The flood of refugees from the Middle East and Africa has confronted Europe with a new set of challenges. For many, the Mediterranean represents a route to a new life. But it's also become a graveyard.
So we, in 2013, we were on holiday on a boat that we rented to go around the Mediterranean Sea. We were visiting different area, but one day we need to really go to Tunisia. And in this area that between Lampedusa and Tunisia, happened that we saw a jacket in the water. Probably that the jacket was belongs to someone that didn't make it. In that specific moment, something happened. Something really touched our heart. It was as a reality check for us. We were there in that sea, in the same sea, where thousands of invisible people were dying at the doorstep of Europe. Could we don't act? We couldn't. We need to do something.
Regina Catramboni and her husband Christopher founded the private organization Migrant Offshore Aid Station, or MOAS. They bought a boat and now rescue people in distress in the Mediterranean. They say they've rescued about 14,000 people in the last 2 years.
I calculated 250, but they're saying they're 400.
Just one boat?
One boat,
We managed to rescue 3,000 people in 2014. And to make this idea happen, we decided to use our funds, just with the funds that our family invested in the project. So we purchased the boat, we equipped the boat with an helipad, 2 dinghies, 2 drones, a crew of expertise, and we were out at sea for 19 days.
These days, we bear witness to disasters happening a long way away, often in real time, thanks to information technology. Many of the images and much of the information comes from news agencies. We will never be able to know everything, but mankind loves to puzzle out the world's secrets, a process that can often be disturbing.
The idea for Stranger Visions came to me while I was actually sitting in therapy. And I was staring at this print on the wall, and I noticed that the glass that was covering the print was cracked, and there was this hair stuck in that crack. And I just sat there for the hour just staring at this hair and thinking about whose hair it might be and what I could learn about them from that hair. And when I left, I just started noticing all of these kind of genetic artifacts all over the place, so hair and cigarette butts and chewing gum, and it just occurred to me that we were leaving these traces of ourselves behind all the time without really giving it a second thought.
Heather is interested in genetic surveillance. With DNA she recovers in public places, she uses face-generating software and a 3D printer to create 3D portraits. She calls her work bioart. She approaches her art like a scientist. In a biotechnology laboratory, she learned how to extract and analyze genetic material. Police and security firms use the same technique to solve crimes. With extracted DNA, it's possible to mine for all sorts of information, such as gender and ethnicity, and perhaps more.
So we have ancestry, sex, hair and eye color, and then moving into the slightly more speculative direction, I found research linking things like tendency to be overweight, complexion, freckles, skin color, hair curl, details of the eyes like crypts and iris rings, and then kind of like a handful of variations of the face, so facial landmarks like the distance between the eyes or the width of the nose.
Every day we leave a trail of genetic detritus behind us. At the breakfast table, in the subway, in the elevator.
Why should I care? I have nothing to hide. And I think that that's really the wrong question to be asking, I guess. Even if you are pretty convinced that you have nothing to hide today, it doesn't mean we're not going to learn something 10 years in the future, 20 years in the future, 30 years in the future that will reveal something else about you that we don't know right now. Because this technology and this knowledge is so much in flux.
It won't be long before our genetic footprint becomes a hot topic. But for now, we're more worried about our digital footprints.
I don't think anybody doesn't care in the context that it's traditionally represented, which means that they don't see any value in their rights, they don't see any importance in their rights. Because, one of the common arguments here is that, if you don't have anything to hide, you don't have anything to fear, of course, echoing very authoritarian regimes in the past. But that's not really what privacy is about. Privacy isn't about something to hide. Privacy is about something to protect. That's yourself as an individual. That's the product of your intellect. That's your associations, your politics, everything that you care about, everything that you believe in.
Edward Snowden was among the first to blow the whistle on global surveillance and espionage programs run by intelligence agencies.
I was created at Alter Primes in Paris.
Es gibt keine digitale Ethik.
There are no ethical guidelines for the digital age, not least because of the attitude of older intellectuals and thinkers in Germany and also elsewhere. We're not interested. Take this problem away from us. But that's not a solution. They're too lazy or intellectually dishonest to actually think about it. But we need to think about it. We need expertise and a debate about how to rethink the concept of freedom in a society where it's being completely overhauled. We know everything there is to know about each other. We need to rethink what freedom means and not allow it to be dictated to us by software engineers.
Vincent Thibault-Flachier gathers donations on his website that cost the user nothing. 80% of Good Deeds takings go to NGOs. Only 20% goes to his startup.
There was a time when everyone wanted to be a stockbroker in the 90s. Then everyone wanted to found a startup and make a fortune, like Google. Now we've realized we can found startups with a social conscience.
Regina, Christopher, and their team are out at sea. They spot a boat of refugees that appears to be in distress.
We'll be having women come in, no children on this one, just women. All right?
Emotion during the rescue mission cannot take over because in that moment when you are helping someone, he needs the help, not you.
Squeeze.
So you need to give everything that you have, 100%, to the person that is in need.
Put it on, a new one, put it on.
Of course, we are human and we will never get used to death or torture. Many of them have been tortured, and you can see when you help them to remove their clothes, you can see the marks in their skin. However, what concerns me the most is their memories.
There are so many problems in the world. I hate disaster movies. I hate it when all we get to see are the problems in the world. It's awful. We need to do something. We need to get busy. Take action.
Not all digital natives are necessarily trying to make the world a better place. As with every generation, the do-gooders are in a minority. But the internet has created new opportunities for doing good.
I'm worried about society and its structures, but I don't have any answers. All we can do is what we do in the field of artificial intelligence. We can run through various scenarios, analyze the situation today, and examine the data. and then create simulations to work out what the most likely development will be.
How likely is it that we'll soon be communicating with machines the same way we communicate with one another?
Hi, you can call me Pepper. You can see me in the
Or is a world in which machines have taken over and humans have become obsolete a more likely scenario?
Just look at how many hundreds of sensors are just on one fingertip. We haven't achieved that integration density, and we don't have the algorithmics to process that kind of data. That's our goal, and we copy a lot from biology. But our current state of technology is closer to an ant than a human.
The International Space Station is an international cooperation founded in 1998.
The ISS is the most complex machine ever built by humans. Over 100,000 people worked on its construction. It's run by various ground control centers and systems. Hundreds of people are involved. We astronauts probably have a broad overview, but when it comes to the crunch, we don't have any control over this machine.
The space station orbits the Earth every 90 minutes, some 350 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Space technology has long been supplying us with useful services, from weather forecasts to satellite TV. Might travel to other planets be the next milestone?
Another reason why the ISS can't go further into space is because it still doesn't operate autonomously.
As an impassioned critic of surveillance practices, U.S. artist Heather Dewey-Hogbog is taking on powerful data collectors such as Facebook, Google, and government intelligence agencies.
I would say I'm like a hacker. So I was a computer hacker, and now I'm also a biohacker. Though I think of hacker as someone who didn't necessarily go through the mainstream modes of learning.
The right to invisibility, online and in the real world. Heather has developed anti-DNA cleaning products. They're called Erase and Replace.
So I think like ever since I was a little kid, I was always this weird kid. You know, I was always the weird kid that more people should be weird in these ways. Mainstream culture is kind of always trying to stamp out our individuality and our creativity. So I think we're always being pushed to adhere to this norm, and we internalize the norm, and then we think that's what we want, and we desire it. And it's just, to me, it's so insidious because it becomes planted inside of ourselves. It's like planted in our knowledge and in our hearts. Then we just self-impose these kinds of regulation on ourselves. And it keeps us from, I think it really keeps us from making a better world. Maybe we just can't even imagine what it would look like to live differently or to shape some kind of different society.
Throughout history, whenever men and women have challenged existing rules, sought to improve them or even overturn them, they've challenged themselves in the process.
Desperation or it's very difficult. Each second that we spend trying to make a decision, people die. So we are paying the price with human life. That is what makes me sad.
Where are you from? Eritrea? Very good. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you. Just temperature, okay?
We need to break our bubbles in which we live.
Regina Catromboni and her organization have saved 14,000 people in the past 2 years. Who knows how many lives they couldn't save?
We were the first civilian boat, the first NGO to use drones for search and rescue, because technology is not only bad, it's not don't need to be used only for war, but can be used in many other things that you can't even imagine.
There's nothing inherently dangerous about technology. The question is, what opportunities does it afford us? Are we using it properly?
Artificial intelligence could autonomously direct a drone to a target, which it can then scan and identify who exactly is there within the target area. It could compile a kill list. It could classify the people it locates to see if they are suspected terrorists, and then decide whether or not to shoot. This means a machine would be making a life and death decision, and that's an ethical decision. In the 21st century, machines are autonomous. They're asynchronous. They don't need input from us, but can make their own decisions. So, of course, this blurs boundaries.
Do we need to learn how to say enough is enough? Today, Luther's idea of personal freedom, one that we've held on to since the days of the Reformation, has segued into the question, how can we best use this freedom? And how do we reconcile personal freedom with personal responsibility?
For Luther, if anything, now that centrality is even more focused on the individual. It's no longer a centrality that is mediated by the church necessarily. You are responsible for what you accept as true and what you accept as false. It's you and only you, no authority. With Luther, it's your freedom. I mean, what you are going to do with your interactions with God, it's only up to you. Nobody should sort of interfere and mediate. These are the two legs on which we've been walking ever since.
We cannot negate our responsibility without negating our freedom.
Scientists and researchers don't want to have to take ethical issues into account. They want to do their work unimpeded by such matters. For one simple reason: if they have to work with constraints, as they did in the Middle Ages and right up until the modern age, then they will be unable to spread their wings and make new discoveries. No one in research and development wants to be in that position. Nonetheless, there are plenty of important counterexamples. Look at Einstein. Einstein helped develop the atom bomb and later said, if I had known that the atom bomb would not only be a deterrent, but would actually be used, I would not have helped develop it.
There is a shortage of physicians in this country, and there are many young people able and eager.
In the early 20th century, Albert Einstein found an equation to describe the laws of physics governing the universe. In his general theory of relativity, he linked space, time, and gravity. The curvature of space and time is still hard for us to grasp. Einstein remains an inspiration to us all.
I always wanted to be a researcher or an engineer or an astronaut. I just wanted to make new discoveries, shed a little light in the darkness.
Alexander Gerst's Facebook posts and tweets from space are hugely popular.
It's easy to tweet in space. You take a photo of something that fascinates you, write down a few thoughts, and send it out for everyone to see. It's amazing. It's fantastic how you can take the world with you on your voyage. Everyone gets to be a part of it.
Twitter and social media make it easy to connect. To me, that's genuine progress. In the past, you had to set up a group or join a political party if you wanted to bring about change. Now, all you need to do is post something on Facebook. Let's meet at Tahrir Square. Let's start a revolution.
I don't think we know what will happen. The internet is still relatively new, and we don't know how it will affect political power. Other than that, we can all communicate with one another directly, faster than ever before.
Are we on the brink of a new era? Are all our existing values obsolete? Do society's rules no longer apply? Or can they be reconciled with new ideas and discoveries to benefit us all?
Digitalization can definitely help solve society's problems, and not just first-world problems, such as how to order a taxi or order takeout. It can be put to constructive use all over the world. Whether it's a matter of analyzing huge amounts of data to help cure disease, or whatever, there are thousands of ways digital technology can be a force for good. We produce reams of data every day, and that data can be useful.
Tausende Millionen von Daten. Und das, weil es auch ihren Nutzen hat.
The world has never been so complex. We're plagued by doubts, intimidated by the new obstacles looming ahead. But somehow, we still believe in ourselves. We're still optimistic, and we still have a hunger for the unknown. In 2018, Alexander Gerst will be traveling to the International Space Station again, this time as commander.
I'm really looking forward to seeing the Earth from that perspective again. But I'm also really looking forward to the spirit of community on the space station, which develops when you're floating up there looking down at the planet. There are 3 of us, all from different cultures and continents, and we all go there aware of our specific nationalities. But up there, that loses all meaning. You look down on this tiny planet, and you realize that's where you come from. That's home. You want to make people realize that it makes no sense to think in terms of these imaginary borders that we've come up with. We need to deal with our problems on a global basis.
Probleme hauptsächlich global angehen muss.
How do we see the self today? I'd say the self has been subsumed into a collective. It's not about me, but about us. The self is struggling because it has to ask itself, what have I done to the world?
So I feel like if we could reverse that dynamic so that we saw ourselves as the same rather than different, that would be huge.
The question remains, what must humankind do to survive?
We see the world with our own eyes. That is the only perspective available. We hear with our own ears. That's the only music going on. Of course not, but it's natural. And I think what we are saying here is that that natural first step, which is healthy and fine, should lead to a second, more mature step. The one which says, I'm not the only one looking at this picture. I'm not the only one listening to this music. I'm not the only one. In fact, I'm just a guest here. And there will be, no, there have been millions and billions of guests before. There will be billions of guests afterwards. How am I going to leave this house for the next generation? I inherited this place from the past. And maybe they did a good job, maybe not. I certainly want to do a good job for the next ones coming in. The ethics of a traveler and a guest, that is the one that I'm suggesting.
We humans are only guests here on Earth. If only we could understand this, it would help protect the future of the planet and mark the start of a journey into a new dimension.